No, if we'll go back and forth.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back, EmpowerMAN Podcast. I'm Greg Tedor, and I'm here with the one and only Mike Gallagher. What's up, Mike?
Greggy T, how we doing? Happy Saturday. I'm so
Yes,
thankful and blessed to be on this podcast. So thankful and blessed to reach men all around the world, and thankful and blessed for this platform to have these open conversations. Before we begin, got to give a shout out to our first responders, our cops, our firemen, EMTs. Thank you guys for what you do.
And I want to give a shout out to all branches of the military. Thank you for your service. We support you guys and girls 100%. And we can't thank you enough because you guys provided this platform. So thank you. Keep up the good work, guys.
Thank you.
Girls.
Thank you so much.
And cheers, Mike. My 80th cup of coffee of the day.
Cheers, Greg. Here's to caffeine and freedom.
Love it. I love it.
At another shameless plug. It's not here. It's in the back. 9line. There's one in Delray Beach where I live.
Love that company.
9line.com for all of your apparel.
Good people. Good people.
America. And they are great people on top of that as well.
So today we're going to dive right in. Major topic. Everybody, every age group, every ethnicity, every job, and every industry faces 2 words: stress management. We all get stressed, majorly stressed. And if you let it consume you, you can wake up stressed and go to bed stressed, which is the worst. So we want to talk today a little bit about stress management, how to deal with it, what tools to use, what tools do we use, any tricks, anything that we've learned works for us better than others. So Mike, I'm gonna start firing away some questions at you because I know you have a very stressful job, career, company, day, time management. So take me through the potential stresses that you face day to day.
That's a great question, Greg, and thank you for the time here to speak upon this. First, we need to look at stress and define it. There are 2 types of stress that we face as humans. There's eustress, which is the good stress, excited about this podcast, excited about the future and our careers. Then there's the distress, which is the bad stuff, which is paying your bills, buying stuff for your business, making sure you meet your deadlines. You and I are learning as we go along in our business the certain stresses that we're trying to manage. It is a process. It's a never-ending journey. And the more that we're able to, we mentioned this the last time, fail forward, the more we'll be able to learn to handle those stresses. The stresses that I face in my business is the scalability. Where do I see my business in 6 months, a year, 3 years, 5 years? Another thing that stresses me out, or I try to manage, is the what ifs. We don't want to let those voices creep in our heads, but as a business owner, we need to learn to mitigate risk. As humans, we need to learn to mitigate risk. So having contingency plans is not a bad thing, but because it can get stressful when you're on your own, you're isolated. There are certain forces that can kind of creep in to try to sabotage the success you're trying to create. So trying to manage those saboteurs, as Mrs. Tedora likes to say.
Mrs. T.
So the stress, those are the stresses that I face, some of the stresses I face, but there's also the good stress that I face. Like I get excited about going to work every day. If you genuinely love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
Amen to that. Amen.
And if you change the nomenclature, like we talked about on our last episode, instead of I have to go to work, I get to go to work. And the way the world is now, people don't really want to work, or they're not excited about work. The harvest is great, but the workers are few. And that comes right from the Bible. And you're seeing that now in regards to there's a lot of opportunities that are out there, but I find a complacency, and we'll be talking about this more in future episodes, how complacency is like the norm. and people kind of want to skate by in life. Those are my experiences. It doesn't define everyone. And believe me, feedback is welcomed. If I'm missing something, please feel free to DM us and Greg will give you that info at the end of our podcast.
Yep.
But trying to find and hire people to bring your vision to life is another thing that stresses me out, because no one's going to ever really care about your business more than you. So,
Absolutely true.
as leaders, Greg, how do we inspire and motivate someone to work with us? I never like to use the term work for.
Yeah.
My buddy Steve taught me that years ago. I never work When I worked for a company, I worked for someone. When I talk with people now, I want you to work with me. Yes, it is my intellectual property. It is my business and my
Mm-hmm.
vision, but you're working with me to help execute. And the more you create an equality between people or someone that you're trying to partner with, the more harmonious the relationship becomes. And therefore, I think that vision can prosper even further. Is that pretty safe to say, Greg?
It's very well said, and I agree with all of it. I too, Steve's 100% right when he says this. You are as well. So I have a couple different businesses. My 9 to 5, we'll call it. I work for a company, but I manage a huge office of real estate agents. That's my wheelhouse. And they're always like, "Oh, my boss, my manager." I'm like, "No, I'm not your boss. I work with you." So I think that's we spoke about this before. Just words matter. Change the narrative. I don't want to be called boss, and you don't work for me. And I think you're absolutely right. And to answer the question that ping pong back to me, it's very hard, especially nowadays. You nailed it, to find help, decent help, good help, whatever. Nobody wants to work anymore. It's very hard to find that diamond in the rough. And how you and I grew up with work ethic and pride and all that is completely out the window, in my opinion, now. And everyone is having a hard time in our shoes trying to find help. Now, when someone like you have a company, you have a brand, you're scaling it, it's extremely hard. But I think you're doing the right thing by setting the tone by the words you're choosing, and you're leading by example. We always say people want to be led. And I think you have your core values personally, and I think you have your values for your brand and company. And people either fit in that, see your vision, and want to be a part of that, or that's it. So my dad always used to say, the show goes on, you're either on board or you're off. And when people realize and they get a feel for how good you are, your vision, and how you truly just want to build people up, build their business while scaling yours, you do it correctly. That's the hard part, but there are people out there. So I think, and it's a numbers game. I see it in my industry. You got to hire 50 people literally to find 2 decent agents that have the same values, vision, and credo of the company. So
Yeah, and your business must be really stressful because you're only as good as your last sale.
100%.
It's like, what have you done for me lately? You were great in January. Let's see you are in February, and your success and your track record speaks for itself. Regards to what you've been able to build for a company, having your own business. What are some of the things that you encounter? Like, how do you manage your day-to-day stress levels, especially when you have a team of agents and the perception of real estate agents, it's feast or famine.
Yes.
It's
Eat
social
what you kill.
Darwinism, survival of the fittest.
Yep.
So how do you manage the egos and how do you manage the expectations of not only your company, but of what you expect out of your agents in the flow of the operations of your business?
That's a good question. So in the beginning, when I took over the office, I took over from a really good manager who was there a very long time. So it was slow and steady for a long time. It was a certain way for an extremely long time. And obviously, any new manager, any new owner or whatever coming in is going to just shake the bag up. And it's going to happen no matter what. Don't take anything personally. It's just business. and I respected who I took over from, and I brought myself. I made it aware that everyone's on the same level. There's no hierarchy. There's a respect that is earned both ways. So I don't automatically respect you. You have to earn my respect. However, I'm going to earn your respect in return. I don't expect it. I will do the same thing. I earn it. It's the same thing. A lot of people with trust, which we'll talk about in relationships. I start out at 0 and go to 100. Some people start out full trust, and then people peck away at it until it's just a preference. But when I took over the office, I just didn't take anything personally, but I also instilled my personal experiences and values and tagged it along what the company wants, what the company expects, and their vision and their path. And I wanted to make sure that I'm always available, open door policy. However, it's a two-way street. I have to trust you. You have to trust me. I will earn it. And I will hold you 100% accountable. And if I don't like something, I'll let you know. And if you step over the line, I'll let you know. You do it again, you're out. So, and I faced a lot of those things, and it was shocking because it was never done before. And when it initially happens, like I let somebody go that was with the company 30 years. 30 years. However, they were a cancer to the office, a pure cancer. Every day, negative, bashing, and that's in the office. So you can only imagine what they're doing out there. And then I started hearing from the agents in my office what's going on with that agent, what they're saying. I don't like that. And then I heard from competitors, other companies' agents calling me, telling me what that person is saying. It was such a complete circle of negativity. You're out. And they thought, oh, I've been here so long, you can't do that. There's a new sheriff in town, and this is how I want it run. You respect the company you're with, or you don't. And if you don't, you go find another company. And that's what I did.
Don't you often wonder how it got to that in the first place? How you could
I
allow
I
that?
know now because I did get to know the person, and having the multiple discussions, we did become friendly, and they opened up to me a lot. Childhood goes all the way back to childhood. And I'll just leave that there.
Yeah, and we can't use childhood as a crutch, but
No.
it can be used as a point of reference into
Mhm.
where the origins of those behaviors come from. Because you mentioned this a lot in our last episode, you mentioned it being the victim, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be the victim, and using your
Nobody wants to
childhood,
hear that, and nobody
nobody
wants to
wants to
hear it
hear,
all the time.
especially at our age or
Yeah,
level of
of
maturity.
course. Also, to finish answering your
Yeah,
question, don't take it personally. Obviously, like I said, however, keep the whoever you're working with refocus. Bring them back to the vision and the path forward. They can get upset or be negative or stressed out for a little bit of time. No problem. We're all human. Deal with it and then move on. Keep going. The show goes on. No one's going to wait around for you. Business is going to wait. Let me tell you something. Your bills are always there 30 days on the dot. They don't wait for what's going on. Nothing else does either. Put your boots back on and go forward. Just keep them focused on what's ahead.
yeah, that's a great point. I think one of the great ways to alleviate or help quell some of the stresses at the workplace is to reinforce the shared vision
Mhm.
that we're all in this together, the community of being being at work with others. Some people are isolated, they work from home, so they may not feel as connected. So you want to make sure as a leader, boss, manager, owner, you want to create the connection
Yeah.
with your clients, with your employees or colleagues, connecting people, what you and I are doing, creating that bridge,
Yeah.
narrowing the gap between, a united and kind of a displaced work front and social, you know, uh, climate. It's extremely important.
100%. So obviously, we've all heard this: burn the ships when you arrive. That way, you have no choice but to either sink or swim, succeed or die, basically. And it's extremely contagious in an environment, office, company environment, when there's negativity and stress. When it's around and it's spoken about all the time, guess what? You have 30, 50, 100 people in office hearing that. It'll spread. Now you have a handful. They're all going to talk negative or be stressed out, and the stress will multiply quickly. It'll spread and compound. Next thing you know, you have an entire office completely stressed and negative, and you have a small window to get that under control, or you'll never get it under control. And it's important because I had a really important question for you that I wanted to ask, because this is your field. I know nothing about this. How can stress affect the body, your relationships, and how you view your day-to-day, your world, your community, if you have one? It's like a 3-part question.
Yeah, so we'll dive
How
into
does
the
it
first
affect the
part.
body?
No, great questions, Greg, and I appreciate you and thank you for bringing those up. The first thing is affecting the body, right?
Mhm.
So there's a hormone in our body called cortisol. Everyone's heard of it. It's a buzzword that people, I want to control my cortisol levels, but really, where does it come from? It's a hormone, right? It's secreted in the body. It's a response to stress. And when you look at our nervous system, we have our fight or flight or arrest or digest. If we're constantly in fight or flight, our body, it's kind of like when you exercise, you sweat. When you're stressed out, your body releases cortisol. We go back to the science of things, Newton's laws. For every action, there's an equal or opposite reaction. So when we're stressed, we're going to release cortisol. That cortisol gets secreted, to most part, it stays in our abdomen by our belly. So that a lot of that belly fat can be a result of lifestyle factors like stress, lack of sleep. Stress is like the domino that falls, and every other health risk factor falls with that, right? If you're not as stressed, those dominoes will stay intact. But the moment you're stressed, it goes from cortisol levels, making poor choices in regards to diet and exercise, not sleeping well, body aches. There's a whole cornucopia of physical and mental effects that stress have on the body. So as a coach, and you're really assessing someone's lifestyle, you really want to take a look at these factors, because a lot of the time, the biggest areas of opportunity or the lowest hanging fruit is not the way they work out. It's not the way they eat. It's how they rest and recover. So the nervous system is very, very important to be aware of. As humans, we are adaptive. It's like an adaptative stress. Whether it's cold, I walk into a freezer. For the first 2 minutes, I'm like, oh my God, it's cold. I'm going to lose my toes and my fingers. By 5 minutes in, I'm cold. It's like when you go into a sauna or when you go into a different environment. Athletes are another example. A running back can run in the snow. It can run in the rain. It can run in the heat. It can run in the cool. So as Homo sapiens, as human beings, we have the innate ability to adapt to our environment. So that's why your environment, and Greg talked about this, about getting rid of that cancer, getting rid of that negativity. Our environment plays a huge role in our stress, both good and bad. If we're in a great environment, we're going to be amped up. We're going to be hyped like I am right now, because I'm in a great space where we're doing this podcast and we're having this discussion. So the environment and the context is awesome. But if I was not enjoying myself, or I was in an environment that was bringing me down, I'm going to be stressed out because, oh man, I just want to get through this. So looking at our environment is going to kind of bleed into what comes out of our mouth, that negativity, because we talked about this in the last episode. Whatever comes out of our mouth, we bring life to.
Yep.
So it's a whole kind of domino effect. If we can control our environment, it's going to set the stage for how we look at things and what comes out of our mouth and how we handle that stress. Now, the second part you asked me was about relationships. I believe it was relationships.
Yep.
Sorry, I've had 5 concussions, so I'm a little slow.
Still faster than me.
Yeah. So when it comes to family relationships, when I'm stressed out, my background is I have my family is quite anxious and quite nervous. Was passed down through the generations. So when I'm stressed out and I talk to my mother, it and I'm not in the right frame of mind, it just expounds that stress and the conversation goes south. Through self reflection, I've learned not to speak to my mother when I'm stressed. I'll shoot a text. Hey, I'll talk to you tomorrow because it's not worth it. We talked about this in the last episode. And when I referenced the past episodes, it sets the stage for the future because we want our listeners to go back and review and hear our conversations to kind of ingrain in them what we're trying to get across. Life is so short. We never know when things can happen. And, you unfortunately had to experience that years ago. And we got to make sure that, our conversations come from a good place all the time, even when we're in a bad place. What comes out of our mouth is so important. Having that frame of mind is so important. So I've learned to manage that by just not talking. When I'm stressed out, I disengage because I just don't want to project that onto other people.
It's kind of like you shouldn't go out drinking with your boys if you're something bad happened or if you're in a bad mood or not in the right headspace. Is that safe to say?
I think you've been with me for 2 decades, so I think you've experienced that firsthand with me.
And vice versa. So yes.
That was a long time ago, though, so that's why we were able to grow from our experiences.
Yes.
But yes, 100%.
That's why we laugh about it now.
Yes, and thankful that we're still alive.
Yes, second that.
And the last one, the view of the world, the environment sets the stage for everything. And I get caught in this mindset a lot because I am isolated most of the time. I do connect with my CrossFit buddies and I do connect with other people when I go out and at the other businesses that I'll partner with. But your view of the world tends to be tainted. It becomes skewed because you feel like, oh, I'm never going to meet anybody, or God, I'm never going to get out of debt, or God, I'm so stressed because I'm losing some clients or I'm having a slow month. So all these things come into mind. But the key, in my opinion, to handling stress is being proactive.
I like it.
Be proactive. Guys, take the initiative. Complacency is not common. As men, we need to rise above. We need to take the initiative. We need to lead. You talked about this. Everyone wants to be led. Every coach needs a coach. Whether
Yes.
you're in a relationship, take the initiative. All right, honey, look, times are tight this month. Shameless plug. Dave Ramsey, very, very popular name in the financial world.
Yep.
Some people like his practices. Some people don't like his practices. I can tell you by going through it, it changed how I look at money and my relationship with money. So learning to budget, learning to look at a macro picture of what's causing you that stress and being proactive. We talked about this before we came on air. Take action. You want to beat the stress, you got to take action, because if you don't, the stress is going to gobble you up.
I agree, and I've said this before. I talk about it in my groups. Aggressive patience. You're not gonna, if you're in a financial, slump, or you're paycheck to paycheck, or things are tight right now. Obviously, you aren't gonna turn that around in 24 hours, or maybe not even a week. It might take you a little bit of time, a couple weeks, couple months, whatever, a couple years for some people. That's fine. But aggressive patience is, even though you're not just sitting back on the sideline praying and hoping, putting all that negativity out there still, because you're just going to add to your stress. As long as you're proactive in doing the things to help out that financial situation, using this as an example, because Mike just mentioned Dave Ramsey, it's being aggressively patient. Okay, you might listen to an audiobook, read an actual book, meet with a professional accountant, whatever, and you get on a plan. Maybe it's a budget. Okay, that's aggressive patience. you're doing something actively, but you're also taking your time and mapping and planning it out. You're not just, waking up and throwing out a Hail Mary prayer that something's going to happen or you're going to win the lotto. You're taking the steps for it. So Mike's absolutely right on that.
Yeah, and those again, that's what works for me.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I like to do is I'll become more introspective, where maybe I'll say a little prayer, maybe I'll meditate on something, maybe I'll go to a point of reference that will help me out, especially when it comes to finances. And Greg and I will talk about this, and we have a whole other episode dedicated to the
Mm-hmm.
financial stresses that men
Yep.
face and women face, that we all face. But just understanding your relationship with the world is really important. And what I mean that is my relationship with you, my relationship with my family, my relationship with money, my relationship with alcohol, my relationship with women. Everything we do starts with me, right? We are
Yep.
the fulcrum. We are the focal point of everything we touch.
Yep.
So you said this in our last episode, not to go back to it, but it starts with you. You got to get yourself right. You
Yeah.
get yourself right, or if you find yourself off a little bit, get yourself right, get yourself centered. Whether it's exercise, diet, going to a cold plunge, meditating, praying. There are a lot of things that
Anything.
you can do for free. You don't
Yep.
need a Xanax. You don't need something to take the edge off. Maybe you do. Again, Greg and I are not doctors. We're not advocating. If God, if someone's listening that have a serious illness, please listen to your doctors. But a more holistic approach would be just switch up your diet. Garbage in, garbage out.
Listen, what does every musician do before a concert? Whether it's drums, guitar, piano, what do? They tune it up. They get it to the
Mm.
right tone, and then they can move on and go forward. And it plays awesome. Same thing for a person.
Well
You
put,
have
man. I
to,
like
like Mike
that.
said, you got to be in tune with yourself. If you're firing on all cylinders, you're good to go. Go and get it. And if you're not firing on all cylinders, which is normal, we all have days where we're not, at least you could recognize where you can, turn it on a little bit, be a little better, and do it.
And if you're having that bad day, accept it. Take it for
Yeah.
what it is. Don't try to
That's
fight
all
it.
it is. That's all it is.
We all have good days and bad days,
Yes.
but I think there's ways to navigate it
Mm-hmm.
so that if you are having a bad day, it's not a cascade of events that's going to lead to something more detrimental or catastrophic, whether it's your business, whether it's your relationship. If you're having a bad day, I'm sure you talk about this with your wife, or, I've talked about this with girls I've dated in the past. Honey, I'm sorry, I'm having a really bad day. And she's like, all right, and maybe through dialogue, it helps you out. But I think just putting that out there, hey, honey, I'm
Mm-hmm.
having a bad day. So I apologize. I take responsibility. I take control of my actions. If I am a little off, it's not meant for any harm. That's where the partner comes in and can kind of help,
Yeah.
and make it a little bit better.
And don't harp on it. Like Mike said, we all have them.
Yeah.
And don't think too much about it. Just okay, acknowledge it and move on. Listen, cold plunges suck. They're awesome. They're awesome. You feel great afterwards. You feel great when you start doing them consistently. Huge fan of it. You see it all over social media, the news, everything, whatever. But what do you think? Every day I wake up, I'm like, yes, I can't wait to do it.
Mm.
No, there are days where I'm like, I just don't want to get in that shit. I don't feel like being cold. But the more we spoke about this reps that you do, those days are the real days you go for it. You do it because it sounds simple or it sounds so minuscule, but overcoming that little voice of like, I'm not in the mood for cold today. And you do it. It's just making you more and more powerful and in your own space correctly. And it makes other things, business, relationships, when you get in a state of mind like that, you can overcome that just by doing something silly like overcoming a cold plunge. It can bleed into your relationships, it can bleed into your business or your brand or whatever. And you can now apply that throughout your life. But let me tell you something. One day of not wanting to go in and you don't easily turns into a few. Now that few is a handful in a week. I guarantee you will phase out cold plunging. I guarantee it.
So
I guarantee it. And then you'll have to restart again. And you can probably take that whole snapshot experience, however long the time is, and apply it to every other category in your life: work, relationships, fitness, eating, same thing.
which is why it's even more important to be proactive
Yes.
when it comes to stress or mitigating stress or forecasting potential stressors in the future, especially if you're looking to start your own business and taking that risk. It's let me forecast what it's going to cost for me to pay my bills for this amount of time, take care of the kids, take
Mhm.
care of this, take care of that, so that when that stress comes, I've got the armor to fight it. It's like, when you fight these voices and anxiety and stress, it's not the weapons of picking up a gun or taking a knife or a bat. Those are worldly weapons, but we
Mhm.
have more spiritual weapons that we'll use: meditating, journaling, gratitude, praying, whatever it is to combat that negativity. We got to make sure that that armor is sharp as much as our worldly armor is short to kind of battle these stresses.
That's well said. And Mike is in the field of health and human performance, correct?
Correct.
So a lot of people, most people, I don't need a trainer. I don't need this. I can do that on my own. Almost every single, definitely every professional, but almost every amateur fitness competitor has a coach. So why do you think that is? Well, it's the accountability factor, but they need to be led. The best athletes in the world have coaches. Their coaches have coaches. So you have to get over that mindset of, oh, I don't need that. I don't need that. If you don't need that, then you're lying to yourself, because professionals need it. And you're not on that level last time I checked. And I think some of the best athletes that I like, Mike has a CrossFit coach. Our good friend owned a gym, is in great shape, Olympic weightlifter, all that. He has a trainer, and he owns a gym, and he was a trainer. Like, you see where I'm going with this. It's, you got to get over that mindset. I don't need that. I could do it on my own. Then do it. Or I guarantee you'll love the experience. And everyone's like, oh, well, it's expensive. If you if you broke down all your finances and all where your money is going, I guarantee you can fit that in somewhere. If you had to take something else out that's silly, take it out. Just take it out.
Yeah, and I'm going to expound upon that. The best advice I ever received was run yourself like a company, like you are a CEO. And as men, we have two big issues that I think we face. One is outsourcing,
Yeah.
knowing when you need to bring in other people to help out, and delegation of duties, because we tend to take it all on.
Yeah.
I got it.
I'm
I'm the
guilty of that.
man. I can do this. I can do that.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah, and that's not a knock on any man, because as a man, those are the perceptive roles of what a man's supposed to
And
do.
those are good qualities, in
They're
my
great
opinion. I agree
qualities,
with you.
and we
I
don't want to
agree.
change those qualities, but we
Correct.
want to elevate those qualities so that the true power comes in the delegation.
Mm-hmm.
I know in my business, when I need to outsource, when I like to outsource, because I don't have all the answers. I'm not a all these different types of things, but I can outsource to a naturopathic doctor. I can outsource to a registered dietitian. I can outsource to an orthopedic, because I believe in working with others and creating a community and team for people and for myself, so that I can deliver the best service possible.
And all those professions and different avenues come to you when they're not versed in your wheelhouse. So it's just a nice, tennis match, back and forth, referral. It's great when you have that.
You have that in your business, I'm sure, with mortgage companies,
Yeah.
and other clients that you've dealt with,
Mm-hmm.
high net worth clients that you've dealt with,
Yep.
where that's like Greg gets the job done,
Yep.
or one mortgage company is better than the other.
Attorneys, same thing.
Attorneys, that's right.
There's some
Yep.
really, really great attorneys, and there's literally the shittiest of attorneys, and I see it every day.
I bet.
Yeah. And they screw up the deal, but whatever. That is what it is.
I bet.
Yeah.
And I think another way we can mitigate stress with it comes to an environment, guys, if the news is stressing you out, turn it off. We
Turn
talked
it
about
off.
this in our last episode. Again, I've been using that episode a lot as a point of reference, but we tend to kind of piggyback each week as a continuum of resources for you guys. If there's a certain music that bothers you, or news, or if your sports teams suck, like, my sports teams have been horrible, but now they're starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel with the Knicks, the Jets, just to name a few, and my Aaron Rodgers jersey is coming in soon. So I'm really fired up about that, but I digress. It's all about your environment. Do not let what's going on in the world, the high gas prices, the high food prices, the uncertainty of our future, and the world climate. We got to keep pushing ahead, and we got to eliminate the noise that's going to hold us back from our destiny.
And if you don't like what's going on, then get involved. Then if you have a loud mouth and all you do is complain, okay, well then do something about it. And if you're not willing to do that, and I respect that, then just shut up. Just shut up.
And the podcast world is so fascinating for the two of us, because it's given not only you and I a platform, but when you look at others in the world, I was watching Megyn Kelly earlier and her podcast, and just the freedom and the conversations that are so interesting has really given more diversity to what people have accessibility to.
Yep.
Greg and I started a podcast because we wanted to change the game.
Yeah.
We want to inspire men and women too.
Yeah.
To
want to inspire
leaders.
anybody. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. We need them. We need them.
Be the change you want to be. I think Gandhi said that. I'm not sure, but I saw that somewhere and it stuck with me.
Sounds
be
right.
The change you want to be. So I hope Gandhi mentioned that, but if he didn't, whoever mentioned that, I apologize for getting the incorrect reference.
I think the whole, since you brought it up, most of the podcasts that are out there are garbage. I'm not saying they're not good, because they're entertaining. There's a difference. If you want to be entertained, you have a plethora of options. But if you want to change your life, if you want to see different perspectives openly and honestly, and not spoon-fed through a funnel of government or restrictions or whatever you want to call it, there are certain podcasts out there. This is definitely one of them, because we will always tell you, right or wrong, what we feel and what we did in a certain situation and what we think is best to get out of something. But a lot of the youth, they're not watching something that betters themselves. So a quick story. My wife watches, or at least used to watch, a lot of garbage TV, the reality shows, the housewives, and I used to watch it with her here and there. It's complete trash. Someone's always crying, someone's always yelling, someone's always has some sort of problem, a marital problem, or there's a fight within the crew of friends, whatever. You can step away for 6 months, walk into the room, she'll be watching. I can tell you what's going on, and I missed the 6 months of it. It's just the same shit. It's noise. It's like cackling birds all the time. My point is, I've spoken about this before. I said, hey, listen, when she was in a rut, when people get in a rut, you have to stop and, like Mike likes to say, take inventory, but that includes everything. You should take inventory of what you're eating, what you're not eating, your sleep, how much you're getting, how much you're not getting, your work, your job, your company, whatever, but also what you're watching. We've been saying this, words matter. What you put out there manifests. Well, you know what you watch, you're absorbing. If all you're watching is shit and crap, how is that going to help you get out of a stressful mindset? Because you're watching the most stressed out people on TV, which most of it's made up and edited anyway, just for ratings. And I said this before, I call that autopilot. So I was like, hey, babe, you might be in a little bit of a rut. Maybe instead of, and she doesn't watch a lot of TV, she doesn't have time, but maybe 45 minutes a night, right? Like winding down in bed. How about instead of watching that shit, pure garbage, filth, Why don't you watch a podcast, find an audiobook, find a book in an area that you want to improve on in your life? And it's finally starting to, you can see it, like, she heard me, and it took a while, and now the other day she was like, I get it. I finally get it. It took a long time. I was patient. I finally get it, because it's adding on the layers of your own stress, and it's not even your stress. You're at capacity to begin with. This is just going to make it boil over. Where is the input of positivity and good energy? So, if now she's starting to get into podcasts and other platforms of some sort of message or an area in her life that she wants to improve on, or just be happy. Listen to some motivation, inspirational podcasts or speeches. You go to bed on that note, it's great. It's all good, instead of just more mindless negativity. Sorry, that was long-winded, but
Not at all.
it goes to what you were saying before. By when you put stuff out there, you're also taking stuff in. If you have a group of friends, and there's always that one negative person, we all get tired of them every once in a while. We don't really want to hear from them, or you'll hear from them in bits and pieces. Keep them at at length, because it'll start to just consume the energy in the room, and no one wants to be around that. So it's important.
No, it's a great story, and it's anecdotal in a way where people can take that and use it for themselves
Yeah.
and what they feed their brain. And as creatures and as human beings, we feed on people's energy. Like I know
Yes.
when you're stressed out. I know 100%. So I changed the
Yeah. It's
tone of
pretty easy to
my
tell.
well, I mean, me too. I mean, I think that's why the symbiotic relationship that we have is we can feed off each other, but
You should see
it's
Mike on the golf course on a good day, people.
yeah. 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 Happy Gilmore has nothing on me.
If you see two guys in a golf cart going backwards
Yeah.
through all the 18 holes, it's probably us, because we always get the fucked up golf cart. But that's a funny story.
With a cooler in the back. You just be careful of the cooler.
Yeah.
But you tend to, like, the more introspective you are with yourself, the better you'll be able to relate with others. So you can, like, pick up on things, especially in that community where, hey, I know I can sense Greg is stressed. How can I help him? And that's about being proactive. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, man, like, as men, we need to learn how to outsource and delegate. So and be okay knowing it's okay if I can't do everything. I'm
Yeah.
still the man, but I'm smarter. The roles of men and women have changed. They have evolved over the years, where instead of taking it all on, I can take it all on, but I can be smarter now. Okay, I've got all this to do. I'm going to call a carpenter. I'm going to call an electrician. All right, I can paint. Babe, you do this. So actually, it demonstrates leadership when you can be proactive on certain situations, because not only will that make the relationship with yourself better, the people around you will actually be more comfortable, because all right, we've got problems, but I know the man Greg or the man Mike, they're going to handle it in a way where they're going to do what's best for the situation, not what's best for the male ego, because they have to satisfy that to validate themselves as being a man. That makes sense?
100%. And this is a great, we'll use our podcast as a clear-cut example. Mike and I are both strong-willed, ambitious, hungry, aggressive business guys. Now, we both have our specialties and we also have our weaknesses. That's normal. Everyone has that, strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
So when we decided to launch this brand, because that's what it's becoming, what did we do? We put everything on paper. We already knew we had the same vision, and that was a given, which is an important step, but I'm not going to talk about that because we were on it. But if you're going to do something, make sure you're on it with somebody. But we put everything on paper, and we had dates, and we had different people who we're delegating to. And we also had, whose task is it? Mine, to delegate to them, do this part, do the website, do brand, do logo, whatever. And Mike does da 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 da. Once you see everything, in essence, it's a mini vision board for our company and our brand. And when you are able to delegate, guess what happens? Check, 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 got that, check. Oh, we hit this date, check, check. And then you start seeing it's like, wow, we're just banging this out. And it's the same thing. When you properly delegate and are able to, yeah, you might be spending some money right now if you're a business owner, delegating it out, it'll come back to you tenfold because now you're freed up to do what you do best and where you are valued the most. Let them do their thing and it'll just add more to you.
100%, Greg. I couldn't have put that any better myself. And that'll kind of bleed in with having a fixed versus a growth mindset, which is a really a big thing that people use these days in regards to creating or conjuring up images of, what it takes for leadership in the world and in business. But I feel like as a society, we have kind of taken a step back in that fixed mindset, being that victim.
Real
I
quick,
remember,
explain to people that don't understand the difference between the two.
So a fixed mindset is this is the way it is, this is the way it was, this is the way it will ever be. Whereas the growth mindset is able to take this is what it was, how can I make it better? This is what it is, but how can I reframe that narrative? This is what it ever will be. Well, it might be like this for now, but how can I improve upon this in the future? So it's basically taking all those fixtures and flipping it so it becomes an opportunity to grow and get better. And before 2020, all these major companies were talking about how to overcome, how to push the envelope, how to do a reach above the line. I mean, there are books about called the Oz Principle or the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It was all about growth. And then
break through that ceiling.
Break through that ceiling, or the power of a positive no, which is something I read. And since the pandemic, we have regressed. It's apparent to me, maybe I'm an old guy or something like that.
Parent here too. You're right.
We have regressed, and we mentioned this before. Complacency is not common. It's not normal to be fixed. Like, well, I get paid to stay at home. Well, why would I want to work when I'm making more staying at home? Roles have changed. You can still be productive working at home just as much as going into an office. That's one, conversation to be had. But there's also something to be had to where the American dream of having that freedom to the life of liberty and the pursuit of happiness, it's in the very fabric of our country. It's ingrained and embedded upon us. Now, for all you younger viewers out there, maybe it's something that you're not used to hearing. But for Greg and I, who are hitting that point where
this is all we heard.
Elder statesmen, it was all about the American dream, owning your own home, having your family, having the freedom to do what you want to do. And I feel like since the pandemic, we have taken a major step back in the fixed versus the growth mindset. And there were a lot of great things that came out of the pandemic. So many great things. There was a lot of negative.
Yep.
But if you look for the positive, you're going to find it. And
absolutely.
And I think a lot of great positive things came out of it. But along the way, we lost our will to work for the things that we want.
Completely agree with that.
So,
and not to go down a rabbit hole, I think that's what they want. And we all know who they is.
We'll leave they to be interpreted by the listener.
Yeah, figure it out.
But I think this was a great conversation, Greg. I think we've
Mike, you were spot on. I completely agree with everything you said.
Well, and likewise, man. And you touched upon a lot of great things. The anecdotes that you were able to use and some of the analogies that you used definitely hit home, resonated with me, definitely resonated with our listeners around the world. Greg, if our listeners want to get in contact with us, where can they find us? And B, what is the best way to reach out to us?
Before I answer that, I'm going to say what resonated with me was the focus on the main tool that Mike mentioned, how to overcome this stress, is being proactive. And proactive could be done 1,000 different ways. Just pick one and do it. And that resonated with me because a lot of people get stuck in neutral and, analysis paralysis kicks in and I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And no, do what Mike says and just be proactive. It could be proactive as simple as opening up a notebook and writing something, anything. Anyway, we really appreciate you tuning in today. If you want to find us, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, EmpowerMAN Podcast. Like and follow, subscribe on all that. DM us on Instagram. Shoot us a message. It's Mike and I reading all of them. We will get to it. Might not be right away, but we will get to it. If you have questions, if you want to continue this conversation, if you want other topics to be covered by Mike and I and just get our input on what we've been through in that, let us know. We'll be happy to discuss it.
Yeah, and that is the key word. We are happy to be
Yep.
here. We don't have to do this podcast. We
Yeah.
get to do this podcast,
And we're here with you, like Mike said. We are with you.
100%. We are a community.
Yep.
We are
just two normal guys.
Platform. We're just two guys that have been through it all.
Yeah.
And just really want to pay it forward. And
yes, we want to give thanks
to all over the world. Greggy T, this is awesome. Another EmpowerMAN podcast in the books. To all the listeners out there, thank you. We will see you next time, and take what we've been able to talk about last week, this week, every week going forward, put it into practice and give us feedback. If feedback's extremely important for us, because as we grow, you grow as well. And I'm going to sign off from the very free state of Florida. Greggy T, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike. We are here for everyone. All right. Have a great rest of your day, night, evening, whatever it is, and be good to each other. See you next time.